Russia's relationship with the West has been marked by mistrust and suspicion for centuries. Russian leaders have perceived the West as a threat to their country's security and sovereignty. In this video, we will explore the historical events that have shaped the mindset of the Russian security elite that led to their distrust of the West. But first, please subscribe to my channel. Here I make interesting videos on interesting topics for interesting people. Napoleon's invasion of Russia was the first large-scale Western invasion into Russian territory that happened in 1812. The French army was poised to conquer Russia, and the Russian army was forced to retreat, and they used a scorched earth strategy that destroyed everything in their path to prevent the French from finding food or shelter. This strategy, while effective in halting Napoleon's advance, caused massive destruction to the Russian countryside and left the population starving and destitute. This experience left a deep impression on the Russian leadership, who saw the West as a potential aggressor that would stop at nothing to conquer Russia. This perception was reinforced during the Crimean War of 1853 to 1856, where Russia fought against a coalition of Western powers, including Britain, France, that were allied to Ottoman Empire. Fast forward to 1917, when the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia and established the Soviet Union. The new government was founded on Marxist-Leninist principles and aimed to create a socialist state free from the exploitation of Western capitalist powers. During the early years of the Soviet Union, the West gave military support to anti-Bolshevik forces, imposed economic sanctions, and funded propaganda campaigns to overthrow the communist government during the Russian Civil War from 1917 to 1922. However, the Western intervention failed to achieve its objectives, and the Bolsheviks emerged victorious in the Russian Civil War. The intervention also had a negative impact on Russia's relations with the West, as it increased hostility and suspicion towards the Soviet Union and reinforced the Bolsheviks' belief in the need for a strong, centralized government to defend against foreign aggression. The Soviet Union was also invaded by Nazi Germany during World War II. This invasion, known as Operation Barbarossa, began on June 22, 1941, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history and resulted in the death of 26 million Soviet citizens. Every single family in USSR lost one or more than one family member during this war. The Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union reinforced Russia's perception of the West as an aggressive and hostile force. It also led to the Soviet Union developing a strong sense of national identity and unity, as the country rallied around the cause of defending itself against the invading Nazis. The period after World War II saw the height of tensions between the Soviet Union and the West, as both sides engaged in a decades-long Cold War. The United States and its allies formed NATO in 1949, a military alliance aimed at countering Soviet expansionism, while the Soviet Union formed the Warsaw Pact in 1955. Soon after West Germany joined NATO, USSR aimed to keep strategic depth from Western Europe. During this period, both sides engaged in a massive arms race, with each trying to outdo the other in terms of military technology and nuclear capabilities. Both sides fought proxy wars in Korea, Vietnam, Central and South America, Africa, and Afghanistan. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War, and its dissolution was a traumatic experience for many Russians, who saw it as a devastating blow to their country's power and prestige. The newborn Russian Republic accepted the capitalistic reforms, but the transition from socialism to capitalism was filled with chaos and anarchy. This transition, called as shock therapy, was implemented by reinterpreting the idea of democracy and dissolving the USSR illegally and undemocratically, as 80% of Soviet citizens wanted to remain in USSR in 1991 referendum. The sudden dissolution of the USSR caught Soviet citizens by surprise and was not the fruit of some democratic process. The result was the new Russian Federation led by liberal capitalist and nationalist President Boris Yeltsin, whose presidency is marked by political instability and economic turmoil, as Russia struggled with high inflation, unemployment, and corruption of oligarchs. His mishandling conflict in Chechnya and his use of force against the Russian parliament in 1993 is seen by Russians as conspiracy of the West, as his era saw Russia's demise as a world power. Even the fall of the Soviet Union and end of history did not bring an end to the tensions between Russia and the West. In fact, it marked the beginning of a new era of tensions over a range of issues, including NATO enlargement, which is seen as a violation of an informal agreement made between Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev and US President George Bush in 1990, in which NATO pledged not to expand eastward. Installation of missile defense in Eastern Europe, which Russia sees as a direct threat to its own security, as it could potentially intercept Russian missiles and makes Russian heartland vulnerable. Kosovo conflict of the late 1990s began when Kosovo, a province of Serbia, sought independence. NATO launched a military intervention against Serbia, which Russia opposed, as Russia sees Balkans as part of its own sphere of influence. Moreover, Ukrainian crisis since 2014 is a major point of tension between Russia and the West. Russian invasion of Ukraine is mainly due to Western attempts to influence Ukraine, which Russia sees as an interference in its backyard. To conclude, these centuries-old tensions and conflicts have led to a deep impression in the mind of Russian elite that the West will not only ignore but also oppose Russian concerns and demands.